Welcome everybody to another mod showcase. This is Gaming for Immersion, and what I have here is a mod that several people suggested I take a look at. Unlike most of the other mods that I've tested and showcased, this one is a full overhaul, and it's pretty interesting, so I'm really looking forward to getting into this. This is the Wegh and Overhaul / Pile of Stuff mod by Warhammer. And what I find fascinating about this one is that it tries to achieve many of the same things that I listed in the best mods for grand strategy, particularly when it comes to making strategic choices more meaningful and also slowing down battles to make tactics more impactful. And the really intriguing thing about this mod is that it does so in really creative ways. In the background here you can see a bit of a minor settlement siege battle, and it won't take you long to see just how different it feels compared to vanilla. I'll get into some specifics of how battles are affected in a minute, but first I want to give a bit of an overview. So this mod changes a whole host of things, from character skills and magic to army movement and replenishment rates to faction instability. I'm going to cover all of those changes, or at least the ones I've noticed in the course of 3 different campaigns testing out this overhaul. There are a lot, so that's going to be the bulk of this video. Then I'll summarize with what I think are the positives and negatives of the mod. If you're just interested in the bottom line, I'll say right now that the positives far outweigh the negatives, and any Warhammer player interested in a different spin on the campaigns that are well thought out and executed should definitely give this one a try. Having said that, there are quite a few features that I will describe as subjective. I think the mod author does an excellent job of explaining why he makes the changes he does, and for the most part I quite like the approach he's taken, but there are a few things I might have liked to see done a little bit differently, and I want to be very clear that these are only my opinions and in no way are a criticism that the mod is wrong. Safe to say this mod author has more modding talent in his pinky finger than I'll ever possess, so my feedback shouldn't be taken as more than just personal opinion. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's dive into the changes.
Can you feel it? From the north it comes.
Yes, this is the Chaos Invasion mechanic from Warhammer 1, and it has been brought back into the game with this mod. Now, this event can trigger in one of 2 different ways, depending on whether or not you are playing one of the Chaos factions. So, I believe what this means is if you're playing as any of the Warriors of Chaos or any of the demonic factions, you will be in the first scenario, and if you are playing any of the other factions, then you will be in the second one. And what those 2 scenarios are is if you're playing a Chaos faction, this event will trigger right away at the very beginning of the game as soon as you load in. And if not, if you're playing one of the Mortal factions, then or I should say one of the non-Chaos factions, this event will trigger much later in the game, and it will spawn in all of the Chaos factions. I shouldn't say all of them. It will spawn in those Chaos factions that it chooses to spawn in with much stronger armies than what they would have at the beginning of the game. And when you want to keep tabs on the Chaos Invasion as your campaign is progressing, you can click down here on Chaos Invasion and you get this lovely screen right here. Tells you the sort of the status of things. It lets you know where Orchaon is currently located, and as you can see here on this lovely map over here, this indicates the positioning of all of your different Warriors of Chaos. So you can also immediately see another humongous change, which is Epidemius here is not starting in his normal starting province. This is the first time I've played with Epidemius, so I don't know this for sure, but I believe he says in the mod that you start out at a different random location if you play as a Chaos faction. So in this particular case, we're here at Bloodwind Keep, right above Cathay. Obviously not where Epidemius normally starts. Alright, and so here we are in the Thorgrim campaign, and same thing, Chaos Invasion. And in this case, it's happened on turn 76. If we take a look at the Chaos Invasion map here, we can see it looks a little bit different. So there's obviously a random component in terms of how exactly everything gets laid out. And obviously not all of the different Warriors of Chaos are appearing on here. So don't exactly know what's random and what's not, but obviously it's a very different way to handle the Chaos Invasion compared to it is in regular vanilla Warhammer. And this is what it looks like in the diplomacy screen. So that Chaos Invasion that just happened, if we scroll down here, we can see that Khorne has appeared. Strength rank 4 overall, 0 settlements. You take a look at them, they are at war with everybody, it appears. And then we can go down, see the same thing here. So Nurgle, we ended up with the Tallyman of Pestilence. This is obviously Epidemius. This right here, this is interesting. So this is somebody named Jawthirster. So it's not actually Scarbrand, but this is Epidemius. And then Slaanesh, we've got Exquisite Pain. So this is Helmrip here. And Tzeentch, we actually have 2 Tzeentchian factions. So we have Sartorial, the Everwatcher here. Again, all of them are at war with everybody. And then we have the Deceivers here. So this is interesting. I don't know if this is going to happen all the time. We have the Warriors of Chaos. Boom, boom, boom. 1, 2, and 3 in terms of faction strength. So we have Archaon, we have Valkia, and we have Be'lakor. Okay, so I don't know for sure. I'm kind of thinking there's probably a random element to exactly which ones of these all appear. But yeah, obviously going to have our work cut out for us in this campaign. And definitely going to give a completely different feel to the Chaos Invasion. Let's go ahead and first of all take a look here at Epidemius. Now at first glance here, his army looks very similar, right? Except that you can already see this does incorporate the tabletop caps mod, or actually I shouldn't say it incorporates it, it's a requirement for the Wegh mod. So you can see right here, there are limitations on the number of special units and rare units that you can use in your armies. So that's the first obvious change. But then let's go ahead and jump in and look at a really, really significant change. And that is as soon as we take a look here at the skills. So a couple things before I jump into this. He does mention that any characters can die. So legendary lords can be killed. My understanding is that they are not automatically killed when they die in battle, that they could be wounded, but they could also be killed. And another thing that is pointed out is that there are no longer any defeat traits for the legendary lords. So now, having said that, let's go ahead and take a look here, and you can obviously see the skill tree is now completely gone and replaced by this system right here, which is basically as you level up, you will accumulate these skill points. And then right here, you can see the cost in terms of the number of skill points for each of these different skills that you might want to take. And so some of them are obviously much more expensive than others. They are a little bit randomized, I believe. There are some things that are in there by default, and then I think there's also a random element as well. And in any case, it's obviously going to be extremely difficult to make yourself a super character like happens all the time in regular Warhammer. So that is obviously subjective. Some people will like it, some people won't, but this is a way to really limit the power of your legendary characters and actually all of your lords and heroes. And one advantage is to this system Again, it's a trade-off, but one of the advantages is that it does feel much more meaningful than when you do unlock one of these, because you're not literally getting them all the time. Here's Thorgrim, for example. He's all the way up to level 13. If we take a look at his skills, this at level 13 is all we've been able to manage. I gave him Tactician, and I gave him Command Group, and I'm sitting on 12 points right now, so I'm waiting for him to get a few more before I can take something else. So here we are, a Legendary Lord level 13, and this is all the skills that I've been able to purchase. So again, it does make each one much more meaningful, but it's going to feel much, much slower than vanilla. A quick note on wizards. Wizards no longer use their skill tree to learn new spells, but rather they get a number of random spells each turn based on their wizard levels. So you can see, for example, here we have a Plague-Ridden who would normally start out with Miasma of Pestilence, I think is normally their starting spell, and in this particular case instead has Blight Boil. Another thing that I want to go ahead and call attention to is actually the Winds of Magic here. So you can see that your Winds of Magic no longer default to a maximum of 100 per army, but rather it is now a default maximum of 30 per army, but it is an additional 15 for every wizard in the army. So you start out with quite a low capacity for Winds of Magic, but the more wizards you put into your army, the greater that Winds of Magic capacity increases. And as you can see here, we're going to be able to jump it all the way up to 45 in a single turn of being in channeling stance. And then one more thing to take a look at here at the very beginning. If we look at our army here, you will see that there is this button right here, Unit Upgrades. Well, this is obviously new unless you're used to playing the Warriors of Chaos. It's that same basic function, except now it is being applied to a whole bunch of different units. So you don't just have to be the Warriors of Chaos, and it's not just like the Marauders and those units that you upgrade with the Warriors of Chaos, but you actually can now apply this in the case of Nurgle here. You can see our Plague Bearers of Nurgle can actually be upgraded to Exalted Plague Bearers at rank 4. So that's obviously going to be different depending on which faction you're talking about. Not every unit can be upgraded in this way, but you'll have to kind of experiment and see for yourself. And then in addition to that, I don't know for sure if this is going to tell us. Yep, sure enough, you can see. Now when we take a look at this building, the Plague Flesh Poppies, which is one of their cyclical military buildings for Nurgle, you can see that Exalted Plague Bearers have actually been removed from this building. So they are no longer automatically put into your recruitment pool here. If we take a look here, they still show up here, but this number of available units presumably is never going to go up, because no longer do those military buildings actually add to your summoning pool. Instead, the only way to get your Exalted Plague Bearers is by using this system right here, the upgrading of these guys up to them. So I kind of like that. You know, they're, again, very much your mileage may vary. Some people may not like this, but I think it's a pretty cool system where the best units, you actually can only get them by upgrading lower tier units. All right, taking a look here at our starting settlement, in this case Bloodwind Keep, you will notice that settlements, have this green bar next to them. This is an indication of the relative amount of devastation in that particular region. And what ends up happening is things like your let's see if it actually, okay, it doesn't show us right here, but once this drops down below the 10 out of 10, the all green, you'll see it go yellow, and then you'll see it go all the way down to red. You do considerably diminish your things like casualty replenishment rate. So we'll get an example of one of those showing up here so that we can take a look the impact of devastation. But before I jump into that, let's also notice that we started with an actual level 4 provincial capital here. So that's going to be another change. You start out with the same starting army, but with a obviously much more highly developed starting settlement. So here we have an example in a campaign that is much further in. This is turn 53. I am playing here as Thorgrim, and just as an example, I just captured Black Iron Mine from the Greenskins, and you can see the devastation here in Black Iron Mine. It's all the way down to a single 1 out of 10, the red bar right there. And if we look to see exactly what that means, massively damaged casualty replenishment rate minus 45%. For all the armies in the region, local recruitment capacity to -3. So it does regain 1 point per turn, so it's going to take 9 turns of no more fighting, no more raiding going on in this region for it to get all the way back up to full health. So definitely something that will slow down your campaign, which I quite like, but not everybody will. But you can no longer expect to just steamroll from one settlement to the next because, as you can see here, I captured this settlement and I'm getting no replenishment at all right now, and I very likely won't get any replenishment for a long time. I'm really, at this point, going to have to either wait for more reinforcements to come up from one of our other cities, or I could possibly do some recruiting into here, or basically just wait around a really long time for replenishment to happen. So anyway, definitely slows down the progress of the campaign. Now, on that topic, I'm going to go ahead and make another comment about the pacing of the campaign. And this is something that I actually don't care for, but again, it's kind of subjective. Some people will like it and some people won't. There is a feature called instability, which I need to remember where to, I guess it's up here. Instability, right up here. So right now we're in pretty good shape, but when you lose lords, it says, as instability is caused when lords are wounded or killed, becoming incapable of ruling their empires. For every 2 points of instability will lower public order by 1, and every 6 points of instability will increase recruitment times by 1 turn and apply minus 10% replenishment. Now, I really quite like that in theory, but what I discovered was when this campaign started, for example, I ended up killing Skarsnik in a campaign, in a battle really early on, and as soon as I did that, it basically made the entirety of Skarsnik's empire extremely vulnerable. Basically, they couldn't even fight back at that point. So I think I fought the battle down here, and then I immediately just, boom, high place, boom, World's Edge Archway, boom, Mount Gunbad. Basically, that one battle ended up the entirety of the war against the Greenskins. Now, this is intentional on the part of the author, and I have mixed feelings about it. I can understand why it's going to be appealing, and it's definitely a nice change of pace where you don't have to win battle after battle after battle and watch the AI just continuously replenish their armies. So there is that aspect of it, but the trade-off is that I think the campaign is going to go much, much faster overall. Or at least it's going to feel faster. So anyway, basically your mileage may vary, but some people will like that, some people won't. And I was a little bit concerned that the campaign was actually going to be way too easy when this happened with Skarsnik. However, as you can see, I am struggling in other places, namely because I'm fighting Wurzag and I'm fighting Sylvania up here. And I think I was also fighting somebody else that the Clan Verms over here. I had to fight them as well. So I was fighting 3 enemies at the same time, which is a lot to try to handle on top of managing your devastation and all the other things going on in this campaign. Okay, and so here is what happens when you lose your faction leader. I've gone ahead and gotten Thorgrim wounded, along with a couple of other lords, and as you can see right here, our instability jumped all the way up to 10, And so at this point, we should see Low Republic order drop by 5 points. That's 1 point for every 2 points of instability. And we'll of course also see our recruitment times increase by 1, along with a minus 10% replenishment. So if we take a look here, for example, we should see in terms of recruitment, yep, sure enough, our recruitment times have gone up. Faction minus 5, I'm going to assume that that is probably because of the instability. So there you go. So that's what losing a faction leader will do to you, and that of course not only applies to the player, but it also applies to the AI factions. Alright, here we are 1 turn later, and as you can see, the instability has been reduced by 1 point. So it basically is going to take 10 turns without suffering any additional instability before you get back to normal. And then one other thing that I wanted to show is if we wanted to re-recruit Thorgrim, I should have looked at this last turn. Last turn this would have said available for recruitment in 9 turns. Now it's down to 8 turns. So again, this is 1 turn later. So not only is it quite punishing to lose your faction leader, to have him wounded, but also it takes a lot longer, basically twice as long, for him to recover from that wound before he's available again. Alright, another thing to take a look at is your research building. You will notice that this right here gives you campaign line of sight and research rate. Let's go ahead and do this. But let's think about this for a second, because what has changed about technology? Well, this is what has changed about technology. Your research rate starts at 10%. And I actually quite like this. Again, a lot of this stuff in this mod is going to be very subjective. But I quite like this because, yes, it looks now like everything is going to be super slow to research. Pestiferous life here, maddening crowds. 20 turns, but the nice thing is this research rate starting at 10%. Well, now all of a sudden when you build a building that adds another 10%, or let's take a look at how high it can go. I assume 30% probably. Yep, up to 30%. When you build this building, you're really going to feel it. I mean, the very first one that you build is going to effectively double your research rate. You'll see the same thing with characters or I should say like ancillaries that can add to your research rate as well. It's really going to feel much more meaningful when you get those things, because you'll start out really, really slow, but you'll really start to amp up your research relative to how it starts. So rather than this building right here being essentially worthless at the beginning of the game, because going from 100% to 110% is essentially nothing, for all of the starting technologies. Now it's actually much more than nothing. It's actually doubling. All right, and another building to keep an eye on is this, what I'm going to refer to as the torch building, which is something that, again, in vanilla Warhammer, this building basically nobody ever builds it. Well, now you have a new type of currency called Intel. And I'm trying to remember. Yeah, over here, there's a button that lets you spend your Intel currency to do different things. So this is a building that will actually let you accumulate your Intel, so it's no longer just a chance of discovering Skaven Undercities, but it's actually adding now to your Intel currency, and then you can spend that Intel currency on misdirection here. Target enemy army in your territory has its movement speed reduced. So a slight typo there. This happens. I see this an awful lot, but it's, in this case, should not have an apostrophe. But anyway, I digress. Target enemy army in your territory has its movement speed reduced. It doesn't actually say by how much, so that's something I'll have to experiment with. Readiness grants an additional 50% movement range to the target army you own in your territory. So you have to be in your own territory, but this is a great way to speed up moving around in your own territory. And then finally, we have Scour Settlement, the most expensive in terms of intel. This reveals all Undercities and Trickster cults beneath the target settlement you own. So, very nice. Maybe, we'll kind of have to see how that plays out, but you can see right here, maybe possibly a good reason to actually build this building for a change. Now, another thing to keep in mind are your army movement. So the distance that an army can move, maybe that's the best way to say it, the distance that an army can move is dynamic, and it is determined by the composition of the units in the army. So an all cav army, or presumably all flying, is going to be the fastest. Regular infantry, obviously, a little bit slower. And then if you've got artillery in your army as well, then it will move even slower still. So what we've done here is we've moved ourselves close enough to go ahead and be able to lay siege here to Iron Storm. We'll show a quick example, actually maybe a couple examples of battles here to show off how much they are different as a result of the mod. But first of all, let's go ahead and get our Bliburk here into our army. Now, according to auto-resolve, we would lose one Plague Toads unit, but we're obviously not going to do that because we want to showcase what a battle looks like in this mod. You may notice already that we're walking a little bit slower. Well, if you think we're walking slow, wait till you see the fighting. I quite like it, but again, this is going to be quite subjective. Some people will feel like the combat moves way too slow, particularly if they have allowed themselves to get used to regular Warhammer and thinking that regular Warhammer is the right speed of combat, then this is going to feel very, very slow to you. But if, however, you like the additional element, let's go ahead and start attacking here. I think we're pretty much in position. If you like the element of fights taking longer and giving more time to do things like flanking maneuvers, going around behind, or just like to have a sense of being able to micro without it feeling like really, really fast and frenetic, then you'll probably like this because basically the damage is slowed down a little bit. So even when the two lines collide here, they're really going to end up doing damage to one another much slower than usual. And the other main thing, which hopefully we'll see displayed in this battle, is morale is handled differently. You no longer pretty much just by attacking straight on end up wiping out a unit until it breaks and runs away, but rather instead the idea is to really focus more on chain routing. So what we're going to do here is we're going to lock them up in the middle. We're getting all their melee units here taken care of. Now what we're going to do is we're going to swing. Yeah, go ahead and get in on them. We are going to swing our heavy-duty units, including you. What did I do with you? There, yeah, I've already got you moving. We're going to swing around and try to hit their flankers from behind, or I shouldn't say from behind, but from the flanks. This one's going to be from behind, and we're going to try to overwhelm their flankers and get them to run off the battlefield. Let's go ahead and get you guys, I suppose, in on the melee as well. I just didn't want you to as the weakest unit. Okay, so here we found out the Marauder Horsemen are able to outrun our Toads, but they shouldn't be able to outrun them by very much, so we're just going to keep them occupied with our Toads, while our main units here, you can already see, look at how much slower it is, the damage that we are doing here. Now we do have, this is going to be huge. We're going to get a summon off here of a Exalted Plaguebearer unit. Boom. This Exalted Plaguebearer we're going to have hit these guys from behind. And then we're going to hopefully start chain routing them from their left flank, our right flank, into the middle. So you can already see we've been fighting for a little while here, and we're still not really suffering that much in the way of damage, nor are we really applying that much damage to them. Let's go ahead and take a look here at our Plague Toads. So these guys are, they're running away from us. They're going to keep doing this to us. So let's go ahead and bail on that. Let's get our plague toads now back over here. We have chased them pretty far away, and we can slow them down so they'll have a harder time keeping up with our plague toads now. Plague toads, I want you to go over this way and then over there. Okay, there we go. So now, as we can see here, we're hitting these guys from behind. We're doing pretty good damage to them now. They are shaken. We're watching them start to really take some serious damage here. Their leadership, 25. These guys, their leadership is still 61, despite the fact that it's in the red. So you can see here, there's a lot of different leadership modifiers going on here. But once we start routing some of them, I think we'll see ourselves starting to rout them all. And here we go. It's about to begin. They just shattered right there. We can now turn onto them. See, they've dropped from 61 all the way down to 26. We're going to be hitting now. They're already breaking. And so we can see these guys are now wavering. Yep, they're broken, shattered, in fact. So, yep, you basically just do chain routing at this point. So it takes a little while of fighting to do it. You guys keep trying to get away from them if you can. It takes a little while to do it, but it gives you plenty of time to be able to do a little bit of tactical maneuvering in battle and basically use your old hammer and anvil tactics pretty effectively. If you can get around to the flanks, you can start hitting from behind, start basically prioritizing one flank or the other where you do the most damage. Now let's go ahead and see if we can get all of our fastest units on them, and maybe we'll be able to let's go ahead and cast a healing spell on those toads while we're at it. So everything else is running away at this point. So yeah, as I was saying, you basically want to maybe fight with as many forces as you can muster on one side in order to overwhelm one side. Start causing the routing on one side, and you'll see it start to spread throughout their lines. So there we go. There's an example of a battle. And as we come up here on the post-battle screen, there's something in particular that this mod changes that's going to be quite dramatic. The ammo that you use in battle carries over into the campaign, and so if you fight multiple battles in the same turn with the same army, your ammunition is going to continue to decrease, so you will be taking less ammunition into each subsequent battle. Another thing that the mod adds is this right here, a dungeon. Now, I'm not sure how many there are scattered around the world, but these are a completely new thing for the mod, where you're only allowed to take an army of 10 units or less inside a dungeon, and the mod author specifically says that they are intended for mid to late game armies. I believe there's multiple battles that you have to fight, and you're not allowed to leave the dungeon until you have fought through them all and won. So he basically says if you take your starting army into a dungeon, you can expect to not come back out again. So let's just put that to the test here. This is actually my first time going into a dungeon. But you can see right here, your army has found a dungeon. Its yawning entrance betraying the presence of a cavernous network of tunnels and tombs that lie beneath your feet. Riches and magical artifacts are sure to be contained within, but you won't be able to leave until you follow one path to completion. Are you sure you want to enter? So here we go. And so it brings up this interface. And so as you can see here, we've got quite a ways to go in terms of exploration. Now, I'm not exactly sure what this is about, because you can see the connection here everywhere except for here. So this looks like a small fight, major fight, question marks in lots of other places, and this looks like it could be a bigger fight, but again, don't exactly know how to even get there. So let's go ahead and go onward. The caves ahead are mercifully silent. The sounds of dripping water and echoing bats accompany the marching of your men. You carry onwards with resolute hearts into the darker depths. And here we go. So we get our next step into the dungeon. This is going to be a battle, as expected. And we'll probably get wiped out, so that's probably about as much as I'm going to be able to show of the dungeons, but yeah, this is going to be obviously a long, involved fight that I can't auto-resolve, or else we would lose it. So anyway, the rewards for getting through the dungeons are supposed to be really quite good. But I've played in my Thorgrim campaign. I think I'm up close to turn 80 or so, and I've still not encountered any dungeons over there. And that would be where I would have an army that's probably strong enough to go into a dungeon. So I still have a little bit more messing around to do before I can talk about these dungeons in any more detail, but I'm definitely looking forward to exploring them. One more thing that the mod adds that I want to call attention to is this up here. We have a calendar now, and this is the month of the year, and I don't know my Warhammer calendar well enough to know what this corresponds to, but you'll notice after we go through another end turn, this month will change. And in the mod description, he talks about this being more applicable towards winter. Alright, so this is a new turn, and we can see that the month up here has changed. Here we can see the effects of winter as a blizzard has hit Karaza Karak here. And as you can see here, it's got a campaign movement range reduction, replenishment rate reduction, control reduction, income reduction, and leadership reduction. So it is very severe, and it's lasting for 3 turns. Alright, so let's go ahead and wrap things up with a summary and conclusion. I can definitely see this being an overhaul that I will come back to periodically for a change of pace, or as a fresh way of adding replayability to factions that I've played before in vanilla or with other mods. The only question for me will be how often. Is this going to be a staple or an alternative? I'll probably do at least one Let's Play series on the channel using this mod for starters. Anyway, for the most part, I really like the added elements of strategy that make Conquest much less of a steamrolling experience than in vanilla. The one exception is that I think I will miss the mega wars between you and that one really tough foe that goes on and on and on, like the Thorek Cetra War, for those of you familiar with that Let's Play series. But setting that aside, the devastation mechanic is a really wonderful way to affect the pacing of the campaign in a very thematic way. I always talk about how the world of Warhammer should feel brutal, and this mod definitely nails that. The slower battles suit my preference as well, but this feature probably more than any other is going to turn some players off to this mod. I would encourage you to at least give it a chance though. I also have mixed feelings about the changes to characters. I think I'm going to constantly go back and forth with this in my own mind. There are times when the sense of building your lord up to be extremely powerful is appealing, and then there will also be times that this rework will be refreshing. Either way, having the option is really nice. One final note, this is a relatively new mod, and the mod author has been extremely active in updating and engaging with the community. I can't speculate on what future development is in store, but I do feel safe recommending this overhaul, knowing that it's not likely to be neglected. On that note, when I posted a video a few months ago about why I predicted the Thrones of Decay DLC would be the best ever, I mentioned that we were in a golden age of modding. This one is a perfect example of that. Alright, I think I'll leave it there. No doubt I missed a few things because there's been a lot to digest and condense, and this video already turned out longer than I intended. Hopefully I did justice to the basics. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.